It is going live here shortly, so it's in the process of.
Was very, very livid. Who does that? Apparently she does.
Okay, who would this be from, Jason? Do you recall a stifle?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
even recall.
But what's, alt branch, or is that alternative branch? Or is that a name?
I'm assuming it's an investment.
That's what I'm assuming too, but who do we send a thank you to?
This your thing?
No.
Oh, I thought it was. Alright, Steph.
There, it's gone.
Yes.
Your kids ready to come back to school? Ainsley is. Jace is not as social. He'd stay home all the time.
I feel that with my everything.
I think it's not so bad. Oh, this is thick. Mm-hmm.
Seriously, if I could not go to work Mondays and Tuesdays in the office and just stay home, I would be perfectly content.
Oh, do you have to go in 2 days?
2 days.
Yeah, that would be, JC just doesn't, I would be okay with it though too. He likes his friends and stuff, but he's just as happy at home. He's just a homebody, yeah. I would say Luke's like that. My girls always want to go. He's like, yeah. Yeah. Unless it's something he really wants to do. Yep, that's Jace. Ainsley, she's not gonna miss out, even if it's something that sounds boring or something to
Yeah.
her. Oh, I wanna go. Yeah, my girls are like that, like.
I used to be wanting to go to anything and everything, and the older I get, the more
I know.
I'm like, wait, do I need to? Do I have to? Would it look bad if I didn't?
Test. vehicle in Carlisle, anything that would have, yeah, so, yeah. So motor vehicle must be up a little this year. Oh, I was gonna ask you about this one. You probably don't know. That one. I'm sure it's stuff with the switches, and that's probably access points. Because that, if you do, no one will ask anything, and if you don't, they will. You probably, yeah, we've got 8 minutes. Oh, that's right, that's what used to be,
Really wasn't anything. So we made,
what was it? But it's the new,
Jerry gave
it's our
him
touch.
different
For
antibiotic
Hadley
drops.
and for the
And he's like,
new,
this isn't
I told
working.
Jeff to have
My
it
eyes
started.
still hurt.
It's phasing out. the
Maybe we just
mechanisms.
need to be
I knew that
like,
now that
no,
I
it's
just had to
not
see
that bad.
see the invoice. It used to be,
Impatient, yep.
Fine, I will talk to her tomorrow, but I don't know that, like,
well, it's changed a few times.
And then watch, by the time you go to talk to her, like, it'll be fine.
yeah.
You're not going anywhere. Right.
That's funny.
My patience with his patience does not.
Then I
Go
got
together.
My overpayment for my red house loan and my overpayment for the other one that I had out for home improvements, so I have to go to the bank tomorrow.
Yay.
Mary, are you fared out yet? Can I ask
One
you
down,
that?
2 to go.
So you got
When
at least one.
is Auburn's?
Auburn starts Sunday, Monday, and then Johnson County will be animal check-in. Static check-in is Tuesday, animals come Thursday, we start shows on Friday. Get done Sunday night, and then I leave Wednesday for the state fair.
I love my job. I love my job.
And I have to go set up all the rabbit pens, cages. So
At both sides?
At the state fair,
Oh.
Grand Island. That's why I get to do it on Wednesday. And I get to come home. And then I go back on Friday to help check in poultry.
Oh, yuck.
And then Saturday I'll check in my rabbits. Probably I'll have between 350 and 400 rabbits. And then I organize the show, and then I'll have the show on Sunday.
There's that big
Yep. I had 350 last year, and then they lowered the age to 9, so they look for rabbits and poultry to be areas that will be greater this year, because those are small animals that
Yeah.
the kids can take and stuff. Yeah.
I'm amazed at how much, like even since, it's been
Yes.
a long time since I've been in 4-H now that I think about it. But even how much that has grown since I've.
Those animals that you saw at our barn will be in the top 10 at the state fair.
Really?
We will win some of the things at
That's
the state
awesome.
fair. They are that good. And they're
There's a
coming from Rod's barn, Rod Knighton's barn.
He was in there the night that like the girls were going to the barn, and so he was pulling them out.
Yep.
and-
They are good. Then I'll come home and then load the trailer and we'll head out Thursday for Lauren to show her pigs. She'll have 4 shows while we're on that.
For
She can still show Brandy.
This is her last year in FFA.
contract for
Oh,
that.
Okay, so she has
Sure,
open
yeah,
class,
but
the
only
futurity, she bought a pig on the futurity sale, and then, FFA. Yeah. So this is it. So next year just be one weekend.
thank you.
You have one extra. You need that for somebody else.
So did the girls pick out what they want to show?
Yes, but their ideas and realistic thoughts are
You
not.
live on the edge of town. Anything's realistic.
Tell that to my husband.
Half lot over there.
I know.
Just build something.
My husband likes his yard. And he likes his yard to look pretty.
There's a pasture across the road.
Right.
And to the south. I know.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
There's some rabbits that I'm ready to part with.
Oh,
I mean, 10 of them, if you really want them.
no.
The little Hageman girls are looking for bunnies.
Are they?
Yes.
Ooh,
Oh,
let me-
and they made their mom sign a contract and dad that they get to show rabbits next year.
That sounds
Wow.
about
Yep.
right.
Yep. And it, what is
Those
it?
girls.
Matt Kennedy, the second one.
Yeah.
Because Kennedy said, I don't want Madison to show because she's kind of bossy. So she
Oh
wants
my God.
So she
That
wants
was a
to be-
flashback to my life.
She wants to be the only one that shows bunnies. So I gave her a book and told her to pick out what breed. And I said, you pick out a breed and I will find you a breeder that will give you good bunnies and stuff.
All right, Steph, let me know it's 6 o'clock, so, go ahead. Is there a motion to call the meeting to order?
Make a motion to make this an open meeting.
Second?
Motion by Jason, second by Mary. Roll call vote. Bobby?
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Hope?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Jason? JW?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0, and the meeting is open. Welcome to our guests. Notification of Open Meeting Act is adhered and posted on the wall of the library. Notice of meeting posted and published as required by law. We'll move to the consent agenda.
Move
I'm-
to,
Oh, go ahead.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mary, second by Hope. Mary, do you have any questions?
No.
Hope?
No.
Any other questions? All right, is there anything you want to point out?
I don't think there's anything specific this month.
Okay. Hearing no comment, we'll go ahead and vote to approve the consent agenda as presented. Lisa, yes? Hope?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
JW?
Yes.
And Bobby?
Yes.
Motion carried. The agenda is approved as presented. Public comment or correspondence? All right, hearing no public comment, we will move to committee reports, policy committee.
I don't know, maybe I should just move this off of the agenda, but I'm sure we'll discuss everything when we get to that in the agenda, so.
Okay, is there any comment from the policy committee? Or wait till we? Okay, we'll go ahead and do administrative reports. We'll start with the principal's report.
All right. Well, to start, I just wanted to bring up our back-to-school night. We're making an intentional effort this year to try to enhance back-to-school night to hopefully communicate better to start the year. We're really hopeful that we'll see a lot of kids and their families there. We're continuing to try to get the message out, whether it's through email or some text message reminders, putting it on social media. So we'll continue to communicate about that up until that day. I put a rough agenda on there. This does not include what the elementary is doing. I just wanted to make sure I included what the middle school, high school is doing. So essentially, we're starting with an open house at 5:30, which, as in any open house, people can come and go. The exception would be sixth grade orientation is also going to happen during that time. So sixth grade orientation and the open house for that building starts at 5:30. Then at 6:15 is when we'll have a welcome in the gym, and we have a speaker that will be there that evening. Then after the speakers has finished, then we have 3 informational sessions that we're going to rotate everyone through. We've been over this kind of agenda, this schedule a lot, trying to make sure we're condensing it as much as we can. We think about 2 hours is the maximum that it's probably appropriate to keep anyone there. And there's a lot of things to try to pack into that time. So we're hopeful that this is a good plan. This is obviously different than before, so I'm sure we'll learn things from this year, but I think this is a really good place to start. So on a note for activities, I just kind of wanted to include where we're at for fall activities. So football has started practice. Right now there are 20 on the roster. I just wanted to add another note here. So due to the closing of Wetmore, we were obviously short a game, and we'd informed the state of that last year. And then this summer, Coach Brumbaugh had told me about another school that he found out had to forfeit their season due to their numbers. So anyway, we contacted the state again, and they apparently we kind of fell off their radar because our opponent was a Kansas opponent. And so they helped us look through Elba's schedule, and the closest opponent that we could find that had a date available was St. Ed. And so it's about 3 hours. So we have a week 0 game scheduled now because that's the only time we had a common date. So that's the week before the beginning of the season. Let us start practice a week early if we needed to. So we're going to play St. Ed on the 18th, which is in week 0. We kind of had the option to do a coin flip for home site, or we could investigate neutral sites. From my point of view, I didn't see a reason why we couldn't be open to both of those things. I obviously would prefer having it at home, but the 50-50 chance of having to drive 3 hours versus the 100% chance of driving a little over an hour, I thought that was probably a smart choice. So we looked at neutral sites. Friend agreed to let us play there, so we're going to play St. Ed at Friend on the 18th as our first game. So that'll get our schedule back to a full schedule as well. For volleyball, there's currently 22 on the roster, and for cross country, there are 3 at this point, high school runners. I don't know about junior high numbers at this point. Those practices don't really begin until school starts, so then we'll get a better number of the junior high number, a better account of the junior high numbers. Just a couple of miscellaneous things. National Honor Society with Mrs. Bloss, they're already starting some of their activities for the year. They're going to do a highway trash pickup this weekend on Sunday in the afternoon. Highway, I believe it's north of town. Then on another note, just an enrollment note, just to kind of summarize for our building, we had 3 students withdraw from, after the last day of school, 3 students that exited Pawnee City to attend elsewhere. And actually this number's incorrect now, we had, and when I say unconfirmed, it's because we're awaiting some form of paperwork, but we had 10 new grade 6 through 12 students enrolled. We actually have 11 now. So the only grade level that did not add a student was the 7th grade. So just to give you an idea of the rough change over the summer. So that's all I have for you now. Does anybody have any questions?
Do we just only have 2 home volleyball games?
Yes, and only 1 junior high home volleyball game.
This is that year.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think most of you are kind of familiar, but those that aren't, when we, at volleyball, there's a lot of invites, first of all, so you play at the same location every year. Then you throw in these triangulars, and so every so often, just mathematically, you get to that year where you're playing a lot of away games, and this happens to be the year. So we only have the Jamboree at home, along with the triangular for high school volleyball, and then we just have the home junior high match against Sterling for junior high volleyball. So it's really, really light for volleyball as far as home contests this year. So yes, I'd like to talk to you about that. So, and something else I should mention just in public too is we're still always looking for volunteers. We've had enough people volunteer that I believe we have everything associated with volleyball covered. And as far as football goes, we're still looking for volunteers for chain gang. It's always something that's a challenge. It would be ideal to have the same group of people doing every game, but as of 2 years ago anyway, that became a pretty big challenge. So we started rotating people, just asking anybody who was willing to do one game, we'd train them, and then they would do that. So as always, anytime you can kind of point a volunteer our way, it's appreciated for those extra responsibilities. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ness. All right. Mr. Rottinghouse.
All right, so starting off with enrollment, so where it looks like, and these are still projections because we really don't know until the kids show up, but I'm looking at about 258 when I went through the numbers. I did hear today maybe that a couple, maybe even 3 that I thought were going to be gone, maybe aren't, so that number, that would put us about where we started last year, that 260 mark. I included in the packet where we're at with staffing right now. So that's just, I won't go over any of the details, but that's for certified, classified, and extra duty. Derek mentioned back to school night, open houses for the elementary. We'll be doing, same we did last year, we'll have the ice cream social, elementary, and we'll be sending this out soon on the Thrill Share. And it'll be just the ice cream social, and kids can get their stuff in their classrooms if they bring it. And then we will offer up the speaker that Mr. Niss and Mrs. Blecka lined up and encourage parents. It'll be a pretty short presentation, so hopefully the time won't scare people away, but encourage them to go over from that and sit in the gym for that speaker that we've lined up. I'd also say staff comes back on Wednesday of this week and got a full day of stuff lined up for them. And, you know, I think to the extent possible, they're excited. I know, got my PowerPoint ready to go for back to school, do's and don'ts and expectations and those sort of things. So we've got that all lined up for Wednesday, and of course they have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday they have off, the teachers. Is not a teacher contract day, come back Monday. And then students return Tuesday. Moving into building and grounds, got a few different things that need to talk about here. Playgrounds, the resurfacing is done on those. If you haven't seen them, be sure and glance at them. They were getting to be a huge eyesore, I thought, with all that stuff getting pulled off of them. They do look a lot nicer now. So I'll be getting the loose ends tied up on that grant, and once that's submitted, then should be getting a check for just shy of $12,000 for the reimbursement on that through the Department of Environmental Quality. The VOAG shop, making headway there. The electrician has, I would say, got the majority of his work done. He's still finishing up. I know where he has the lights done, they look incredibly, it's just amazing how much brighter it is down in there. So he still has some of the lighting to do, and then he'll have to do the wiring for the rooftop units when they get set in place, and outlets for the downdraft tables and the welders that would go with the downdraft tables. The windows, I mean, nothing has really changed since my last update to you. Tanner Goes, of course, was the one who got the bid on that. As I've shared, I believe last month and maybe even 2 months ago, that he continues to claim that there are manufacturing delays. At this point, I have to believe that that's the case. Most recent communication with him is that mid to late August is what he said is a secured delivery date. So probably later this week, I'll touch base with him again and see if he's got any updates on that, so. I'm really looking forward to those windows getting replaced, because I think it's gonna make a world of difference on appearance. So, those are custom-made windows, and they are what are called storefront windows, so when those do get put in, they're gonna look nice, I think. Fortunately, I've got some bad news on the heating and cooling front for the high school building. You know, one, I want to talk about the HVAC system, the newer HVAC system that's in there. Just kind of give I'll try to make it brief, a brief update on, you know, or maybe kind of a history for, you know, some of you were here when that all happened, and some of you, you know, are new to this. So I just thought I'd take just a few minutes to remind everybody, you know, how we got to this point. So up to 2013, the only heating, cooling we had for the building was the boiler, was the source of heat, and then, of course, the window units in the classrooms. And then the school board at that time went through the process of using a QC Puff bond, which is basically a bond that doesn't have to go to a public vote. At the time, they've really ratcheted down what it can be used for, but at the time it was pretty wide open, and I think it was 10 cents maybe on the levy that you could go up for a project. Anyway, it was, the HVAC was the main thing, and then they also did windows and some smaller things at that time. So it was like a $1 million bond and I think another $300,000 out of building fund. It was like a $1.3 million project at the time. Well, about the time I started, the spring of 2017, I remember, things really started to, we really started to have issues. And let me back up a little bit. It was a design build, which means it was a design build. I won't go into, it's different than the RFP process, or you identify it, a manufacturer, and then they serve as the general contractor. And the Trane got the bid on equipment, and they put in Trane equipment, and then they subcontracted a lot of the work. Fast forward then to the the spring of 2017, winter, spring. I think if I remember correctly, we had 12 that went bad, and it's 3 sections on Freon. All 3 sections were low on Freon, and there were 12 VFR cassettes, the overhead ceiling cassettes that had to be replaced. Leaned on Trane a little bit about that. We checked with the attorneys. We didn't have any warranty standpoint, any kind of a legal recourse, but, you know, they did at that time stand behind their product, and they put in, they fixed the Freon leaks, and they replaced all of those units, and there was no cost to that. Every issue we've had since then, you know, we've had to pay someone to do that. Initially, we were using Trane to do that repair work. The reason we went away from Trane was because they started actually subcontracting the work to Ruts Mechanical. And I said, well, why are we going? Because they said they didn't have the equipment, they didn't have the tools to work on our equipment. So why would we pay Trane more to bring in another company to do the labor? So we've been going directly with Ruts since that time. Long story short, I know last summer we had the conversation about how we're going to try to get them in the summer to make sure we've got things, all the, you know, everything greased up and ready to go. Well, that wasn't a problem because it was down twice this summer, and they had to come in and work on it anyway. The first time was pretty pricey. I think that was on last claims. This round of claims, we had a smaller one. What it boils down to is when there's 2 major issues over the last 7 years that I've kind of just come to the conclusion, based on the feedback I've gotten from the different repairmen when they come. There were 2 fundamental issues with this system when it was put in. One is the piping for the Freon wasn't done well. We've had multiple leaks over the years, and the problem, you know, well, that's a problem. It's an odd combination of aluminum and copper piping, which is unorthodox, is what I'm told. And they also didn't, I don't know what the exact word is called, but put the individual shut-off valves on each unit. So anytime you have to work on a unit, you have to recapture all the Freon. It's 3 sections of the building. You have to recapture all the Freon from that entire section. You can't just isolate the one unit and work on it. We periodically will have leaks in the piping, and someone will have to come recapture the Freon, put in a different substance that they can detect. Then they go around with their detector, find the leak, take that out, fix the leak, fill it with, I think, nitrogen to pressure test it. If it passes the pressure test, they pull it back out, and then they pump in the Freon that they were able to capture, and then they have to put in new stuff. So that's expensive. The other issue that this was the last time he came, he said what they've talked is these VFR cassettes, or the overhead units that sit in the ceiling, that they came with a part that's called an expansion valve. I've seen them, they just look like 2 little pipes, and there's like an electronic motor in there that will open it and close it. Apparently there was a part on that was snugged down too tight in the factory, which is causing them to malfunction prematurely, or they're not supposed to wear out that quick, and especially where it's that same part in all of these units. So there again, anytime they want to do any of that work, they got to recapture all of the Freon, tear it apart. They used to just replace the whole units. They said it's cheaper to replace the whole unit than it was to replace this one part, because you got to tear the whole machine apart, get in there, fix it. Now they're going in and tearing it apart, putting that piece in, soldering it in. Again, they have to put it all back together, pressure test it, passes pressure test, then recharge it. Pricey process, and that's what they had to do this last time. I think it sped it up because they knew from the previous time they were here, they knew what part was going, to get to. So it kind of saved some of the labor there. But where I'm going with that is we're probably going to continue for the foreseeable future to see routine visits for this system that are going to require Freon leak repairs or unit repairs. I did initiate a conversation because I just called the lady who's in charge of billing there at Rudd's, and she says, we just keep writing these invoices to you guys, and I feel bad. It's like, do we need to initiate a conversation about, is there something we can do to fix the problem? I don't know if that's feasible, and she was in no hurry, I was in no hurry. I told her, well, ultimately the answer might be no, but we might start to down the road have a conversation about if we could phase these out in small sections, what would it really cost? If we're going to get into the $500,000 range per, or more per section, then it's not realistic. We've got another year left to pay off the bond on the current project. We're not going to put in a new one while the current one is still, the bond is getting paid off. But, at least to look and see, is there something we can do? And maybe once we get all the leaks fixed and we get all these expansion valves swapped out, it'll run for 20 years for us. We never know. But I just kind of want to give you an update there on and a history lesson for the newer folks here. Also pertaining, then moving ahead to the boiler. So we've got we've got a boiler, and I learned some more about the boiler system through this process. I knew some, but I learned more. Boiler did not pass inspection. Every 2 years, every boiler under state law has to be inspected. They have to send a company out to tear it apart, and the contracted company that they send in does inspection. It's like 6 tubes in it that needed to be replaced and some leaks. It's a steam boiler. It's a 1969 model, so apparently the original boiler with steam was replaced in 1969, and I'm thinking, I don't know, no one here would probably have a knowledge of that, but I'm thinking maybe that's when the current boiler building was built, when that boiler was put in, because they kind of made it sound like they think the original boiler sat more to the west, but regardless, 1969, because that's the model year of the boiler. I haven't actually seen a proposal. The company that has been doing our boiler repair most recently and gets it ready for inspection is the company, it's in here somewhere. something with a B, Grunwald, something like that. It's kind of like a Griswold, only, yeah, Grunwald Mechanical of Omaha. And so they, I haven't actually seen proposals, but based on our conversation with the owner, I've kind of got ideas of what he's talked about in dollars and cents. I think he wants to have all of his options ready to send to us before he gives any one. So initially, he put up a proposal just to do repair on what we have and get it, get it operational, pass inspection. Somewhere, I'm thinking he talked in the $16,000 to $20,000 range, knowing that in 2 years, we could have more additional repair that would need to be done. New boiler is not cheap. I thought he said it was like 119 or 129,000. That's to the level that you'd have to put it out under state law for bid. I knew that we had an odd combination of steam and hot water, and we finally, as we were investigating, we finally got that figured out. So when the building was built in 1931, it was a steam boiler, and all the registers and the piping in the building were steam. So has anyone ever been in a school that, the steam comes out? I know you remember that at Axtell, because it was that way when I was there. So that sound. So apparently in 1981, they were having enough leaks and issues that they did it, because we found the blueprints. They took out all of the steam from the building other than for the auditorium, and they put in hot water pipes that circulate. So the registers that were put in, the pipe that was put in 1981. Steam is then brought over from the boiler, goes into something that's called a heat exchanger, does exactly what it's called. It moves the heat from the steam into the water, and the water is circulated to heat up the building. Steam also then will go to the old blower, which are neat. They're 1931 motors in open coil fans that blow air into the auditorium, and it blows it through a steam radiator of sorts. I don't know what they're, but and that heats the auditorium when the rare occasions we need to do that. So we've also learned that the heat exchanger is only rated at 650,000 BTUs, and the boiler is putting off 5 million BTUs. So not efficient. And so, again, and I should point out too, the previous unit, the system, I should say, that we were talking about that also doesn't work properly. It's supposed to be the primary heating and cooling in the classrooms. It's more efficient. It heats and cools with Freon. That's for the classrooms. But those were only put in the classrooms, those VRF cassettes. So the hallways, the restrooms, the cold porcelain toilets, the auditorium, when it gets cold out, we've got to kick on the boiler for secondary heat for those locations. And when our other system goes down, it becomes our primary source of heat, and so we kick it on for those purposes as well. So we kind of had a conversation then, how could we, what would be another option? And the guy who owns this company, is the first time I've ever really worked with these guys, but I've been pretty impressed. He happens to be an engineer, and he's also the owner, which is advantageous because he can do his own engineering work. He seems very knowledgeable of the system. He can put in 2 hot water heaters. They would sit down in the old locker room under the stage, not the prop room, but the old weight room locker room. They would sit in there where the shower sat, and they combined would have a rating of 650 BTUs. You'd isolate the heat exchanger, and the water then would circulate. And it would serve as the secondary heat for all the classrooms, and then the primary heat for the hallways and the restrooms. And then, rather than, then you'd eliminate the boiler altogether, and then we'd create a new storage room, because then we'd call Smiths and have them come up and demo it, and for the iron, it'd be good money. There's probably several $1,000s worth of iron and sitting in there in that boiler. So we demo that, and then he said, well, probably your best bet, most cost effective would be to do rooftop units, RTUs for the auditorium. But actually, instead of putting them on the roof, set them on the ground, build a little retaining wall to the north, right north of the auditorium there, kind of the walkway between the boiler shed and between the gym and the high school building. Blow the heat in and the return air through the windows, probably bring ductwork over to the middle of the auditorium to help also with noise and just equal distribution of the heat and cool. I told him, you know, we're probably talking about a dollar amount there that would have to go out for bid. If we're gonna do that, it only makes sense anyway, if we're gonna put in a Freon rooftop unit to have it do heat and cooling, because it's Freon anyway, so for really not a whole lot more money. I know that was never the conversation, was to add air conditioning to the auditorium. But, when we get to a point where he actually has numbers on a piece of paper, I've already kind of put the Building and Grounds Committee on alert that we need to get together and have a conversation about what we want to do there. But that could be a necessary big, you know, if we just want to maintain status quo, we spend the $16,000-$17,000 to get it repaired and see what happens 2 years from now. Or we look at doing and I know Train had these conversations if the money was there back in 2013, because David Raymond, you probably remember that name, he and I chatted a little about what was going to be if the money was there to do the whole project. But it sounds like this is a little bit more of a common sense approach that may not be quite as big and could get the job done. The only other thing I have in my report then is just my preliminary budget information, and bear in mind that this is just guesses. Nothing is nothing in terms of valuation and tax, you know, what our tax authority will be in terms of what the value of a penny is on taxing levy. Don't know that. In my conversation with the assessor's office, they said that it was, never did get any like numbers, but she made it sound like ag pretty much stayed about the same, maybe just a slight increase. Residential sounds like had a little bit more of an increase this year. So I just guesstimated a 1%. So I've got some rough numbers there. What I'm looking at right now on a budget that I'll put out to our fiscal responsibility committee and then to the board ultimately at our special meeting at the end of the month. But keep in mind, if valuation were to actually go down or stay about the same, that would have an impact, and it could go the other way as well. You know, I think the board, I hope the board knows that my approach to this is don't ask for money we don't need. You know, I know we've been able to build a little bit of a cushion these last couple of years, but a lot of that's one-time federal funds that have come in that we kind of weren't expecting, that weren't built into the budget. And that's a good rainy day to have, because I really expect to see a huge decrease in state aid next year, maybe to the tune of $400,000 or $500,000. So it's good to have that money in reserve. But just kind of wanted to just throw some numbers out there. Our current total levy, including the county's penny that they get, is 3.3 million and 17,000, and we're right at 94 cents on our total levy. 95, but it could be lower than that too. So where I was going with that, when I said don't ask for money we don't need, knowing that we'll lower the levy if we can, but down the road then we may have to raise it back up if we need that funding, more of it down the road. So I'll field any questions that anyone has.
Do you want to have any questions for Mr. Ridinghouse?
On that heating and cooling, is that something that ESSER funds would cover?
We have pretty much everything earmarked.
Right, I get that. I was just curious if that would it, if that-
Only if you're introducing fresh air. If it has to, any HVAC project has to be done with, it has to be able to justify the argument that you're preventing the spread of COVID-19 or airborne pathogens. That's why I think we had, like when we did our gym project, which was really bad timing too, because that's when the market was just, there was huge demand and minimal supply. But, you know, they had to, pretty much any HVAC project has to introduce fresh air. But, so on the boiler, no, because you're not dealing with fresh air.
Right.
You're circulating. And I think when they did the high school building, they were able to get away with not, because it's recycled air in there, which to me, I mean, I get it from the fresh air standpoint. You know, that was a criticism of schools in general when the pandemic hit, was that we are we're reusing a lot of not well filtered air and not fresh air. The flip side is when it's 80% humidity and 95 degrees outside, it doesn't take near as much energy to take the air that's already cooled in the room and add, you know, and take a little chill out of it. When you're pulling in 80% humidity, 95 degree air from outside and you're blowing it in constantly, it's taking a lot more energy to bring that air in. So up until the pandemic hit, I thought the whole idea of fresh air was ridiculous. Now it made me appreciate the value of bringing in fresh air. It doesn't change the fact that it's highly inefficient, especially when we have these really hot or really cold days. So to answer your question, maybe, maybe for some of it. Probably for the RTUs, you could say you're introducing fresh air into an auditorium that we didn't have it before. And there is, that's something, but then we get into Davis-Bacon and bidding, and
I was just curious.
it's fun.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to policy 7A. Consider accepting the policy committee's recommendations for policy reviews and update as presented. For review only, 3003, bidding for construction, remodeling, repair, or site improvement. 3003.1, bidding for construction, remodeling, repair, or related projects financed with federal funds. 3004, general purchasing and procurement. 3004.1, fiscal management for purchasing and procurement using federal funds. And 3006, controlling receipts. Can we approve all those together? Mr.
We
Okay.
have been
Okay.
doing
That's what I thought.
I-1 and 2, A1 and A2 together.
Okay, so A2 is for review and revision, 3005, school activities fund, and 3007, review of bills.
While you're thinking, I'll just say that, you know, a few of these, the two federal, doing projects with federal funds, those are the policies we've been using a lot on the ESSER stuff. But two, we just actually made revisions to those last month because if you remember, we put the Buy American clause. But that just happened to be where we were at in our rotation that we've established, and so wanted to stick to that, so.
I'll make the motion to accept the policy committee's recommendations for policy review as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Bobby. Jason, do you have any questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
Bobby,
No.
any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call vote on policy A1 and 2. Hope,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
and Lisa, yes. Motion carried. We'll move on to item B. Consider renewing the elementary, secondary, and staff handbooks for 2023-24 with changes as presented.
I'll make a motion to renew the elementary, secondary, and staff handbooks for the 2023-2024 school year with changes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by JW. Jason, do you have any comment?
No.
JW,
No.
any other comment?
So I'll kind of explain this for our non-policy committee folks. So the stuff in the first, on the middle of the packet, so it's got a lot of green and yellow. The first several pages are pretty much just, we're taking the stuff from policy updates from this past summer and past spring, and we're moving that into handbooks to try to make sure our language for handbook lines up with policy. And then the second part, starting, is that policy? No, that's still policy upgrades. So it's where the cover for the high school handbook starts. Those are more, so in other words, this first part, we're pretty much just, we're doing technical changes like rolling years forward, calendar updates, and we're bringing in language to align with policy for policies that we've already changed. There's not a lot of new material change in that part. The second part is the more material change in terms of making updates, and this primarily just affects the high school handbook, and these were, I know Mr. Niss and Mrs. Bleck have spent a lot of time kind of going through and wanting to make some upgrades to procedural things pertaining to the high school. And that was, like we've done in the past, this was new, we've never done this before for handbooks, but I kind of tried to, in the Google Doc that we do our comments, and the committee can comment, and the administrators can come back and comment, and then we can make tweaks as we need to in upgrades. I tried to link in every different concept as its own separate document, so we could talk about each concept in isolation, the committee. And I don't know, I don't want to speak for the committee members, but for me personally, I feel like that process has really worked pretty well. It's a lot better than 1,000 emails. And so it seems to be working pretty smoothly.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on 7B. Consider renewing the elementary, secondary, and staff handbooks for 2023-24 with changes as presented. And we'll start with Mary,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Lisa, yes, Hope.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Moving on to new business, consider approving the agreement with the Tiger Pride Foundation to lease the Table Rock second and third grade classrooms for the 2023-24 wrestling practice for $1,000 as presented.
I move to approve the agreement with the Tiger Pride Foundation to lease the Table Rock second and third grade classrooms for the 23-24 wrestling practice for $1,000 as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Hope, second by JW. Hope, do you have any comment?
No.
JW?
No.
Any other comment? Hearing no comment, roll call vote on item 8A, starting with Jason,
Yes.
JW,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Lisa, yes, Hope,
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Consider approving the proposal for Dana F. Cole and Company to conduct the district's independent audit for the school year ending August 31st, 2023.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposal from Dana F. Cole and Company to conduct the district's independent audit for school year ending August 31st, 2023.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jason, second by Hope. Jason, do you have any comment?
No.
Hope?
No.
Any other comment?
I would just point out, again, because I kind of go over this every year, but external audit is required by state statute that we're a government agency, we have to have an external audit. It's got to be done by someone. I feel like we've established a pretty good working relationship with Dana Cole out of Grand Island. I've heard different districts not say such good things about their auditors in terms of how they communicate, how they, how long they're actually physically in the building, those sorts of things. In the past, I've always thought that their prices were really good. I'm looking at what they've got estimated in there. It's certainly higher than it's been in the past. It says, I think we're several pages in, but it says up to not exceed, it's based on their hourly rates, not to exceed 13,800, and then additional expenses to be approximately $940. But I can think back too to years ago, well over 10, 15 years ago, you know, when I was in Kansas, and still remember it being a $20,000 expense for external audit. So even though it has gone up, I don't think it's, I mean, if it's something we'd want to bid out, I mean, we could do that. I'd want a little more advance notice, or at least do, maybe come next year, I can do a little Q&A or just send a feeler out to area soups and see what they're paying for their audit if they have, or maybe business managers would be a better, to get a more accurate answer. To find out what they're paying, just to make sure we're not overpaying for that, since there has been an increase, but you know, I would say they're good in terms of when we have questions, we can reach out to them. You know, they like to work with us. They're not here, they want to fix things. You know, they're not like a gotcha type situation, but they're also not going to, you know, just ignore problems if they find them. They're going to try to fix them. So, you know, I've been pretty pleased. I mean, they have had a lot of turnover too, probably why their prices have gone up, because they've had to throw big dollars to get people to come in. But at least there's been, Mitch is now the stable one. It was before Mitch, it was Chuck, then Chuck was gone, and then now Mitch is gone. Before Chuck, it was Gene. But they have had at least one person of the original core that has stayed along, that knows our account, that we can communicate with. So that's what I would have to say about them as an auditing firm.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, we are voting on item 8B. Consider approving the proposal from Dana F. Cole and Company to conduct the district's independent audit for the school year ending August 31st, 2023. Roll call vote, JW,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Lisa, yes, Hope,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
JW, or Jason.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried 6-0. Item 8C, consider approving the new mission statement and belief statement prepared by the district leadership team as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the new mission statement and belief statement prepared by the district leadership team as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Mary. Jason, do you have any comment?
I like it.
Mary?
I do too. I like it.
Okay. Any other comment?
I'll try to keep it brief. So this was, we had the staff in service last spring. Jen from the teaching learning team at issue 4 came in, led that process. Bobby was actually able to come in. She sat through it. We had, so we had one board member represented. That was right. You were at that. Yeah. And then teachers and other support staff and some student leadership team members. That information got kind of aggregated and then fleshed out. And then this summer, we met with another member of the teaching and learning team, Tara Gossman, actually this past week, as our, what we're now calling district leadership team. And we met, and this is what we come up with to try to reflect what we think so this will replace what's on top of our letterhead, and it'll actually get updated in policy too. It's early in the series, and it'll be kind of the foundation for our continuous improvement and at some point strategic plan. And we split hairs on words.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll vote on item 8C. Consider approving the new mission statement and belief statement prepared by the district leadership team as presented. Roll call vote, starting with Bobby.
Yes.
Lisa, yes. Hope?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
And JW?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item D, consider approving the teaching contract for Mrs. Brandy Hairhoos. Am I saying that right?
Horges.
Horges. That's Bobby's last name. Okay.
Not planning on
Horges,
going
sorry. As an interim teacher for school year 23-24, and to accept her resignation for that position effective December 31st, 2023, as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the teaching contract of Mrs. Brandy Orges as an interim teacher for school year 2023-2024, and to accept her resignation from that position effective December 31st, 2023, as presented.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Bobby, to approve item 8D as presented. Jason, do you have any comment?
No.
Bobby,
No.
any other comment?
You know, I don't, we do this so often now, probably I'm beating a dead horse here, but just remind everyone that the reason why we do the resignation is that there is no good way to hire a long-term sub. So this is what the attorneys years ago, when we first did this with Mr. Strong, recommended is there's an agreement kind of between the district and the teacher that, so we put them on a standard teaching contract, and then they're resigning in advance. There's no real clean way to do it, so this is the best muddy way to do it. And then if we get to December and we don't have any better options, we need to extend it for the school year, then I'd probably at the December board meeting ask you to approve a new resignation letter that extended out to the end of the school year.
Are you contacting Peru or any
Yeah,
of
oh,
those
yeah.
schools?
Yeah. Peru had nothing. Like, and I take that back. They did have, no, was it Peru? We did actually have an applicant late last spring, and I think by the time I immediately emailed her back, and then the next response I got from her was, I actually just took a job in the classroom I think it was La Vista, something like that. So it was, so we'll keep looking.
I would also recommend Northwest Missouri
Yeah,
State.
that's a
We
good
have
point.
a ton of kids from this area that are going to school there anymore.
Yeah, and they have a really good education program.
Well, and we need to be looking at not only students that are graduating this year, but students that are graduating a year out. I know Mr. Bloss's student teacher last year, so she student taught last spring. She already had a job at this time last year, and she was a whole year out. So schools are recruiting quickly and getting their contract, there's a girl that helps me that is student teaching in McCool Junction. She's already taken a job in extension, and they're going to wait for her till January when she graduates. So we can't just look at graduates. We have to look at who is in the program.
All right, any other discussion? Brian, can you fill us in, though, who will be doing her IEPs and all of
Okay,
her
so-
plans?
So I reached out to a company that's been pretty commonly used, I know the service unit, Ellen's at the service unit says she's used them. They go by a couple different names. It's ProCare Therapy, but they also go by VocoVision, I think is how it's pronounced. And and it actually happens to be a teacher who lives in Nebraska, and it's in the kind of the Firth area, so it's not far away. But she's kind of, because of circumstances, she can't really venture too far from home. So with this company, it's kind of like a head hunting company. They come out and put desperate schools in touch with teachers who want to work virtually. And of course, they collect probably a sizable commission. The advantage of it is that you're not putting someone on contract. And so you don't, it doesn't have any of the expectations of continued employment that come along with putting a teacher on contract. So if things don't work out, you can cut ties and go your separate way. It's kind of like an at-will contract that either party can separate the contract 30 days in advance without penalty. So we're using them, and she's going to be on contract 15 hours a week to do case management. So it's like basically handle all the stuff in term for the elementary caseload. She'll handle all of the meetings, or scheduling meetings, and she'll join meetings through Zoom and do the paperwork and make sure the teachers have the information they need. Basically, all the legal stuff, which to comply with Rule 51 of Department of Education. And then Brandy will, she'll still be responsible for lesson planning and those sort of things, and deliver and carrying out the IEP plans. She just won't be in charge of the paperwork side of things, basically. You look perplexed, Lisa.
So it's only 15 hours. So who's giving Brandy,
We're working with service unit for,
so they're going to be
and
here to help her?
we actually have a mentoring program going on as well. Granted, in our only returning endorsed special education teacher is Deidre. But, so she's working with Austin and with Brandy through a grant that we're participating in. I think one of the service units is overseeing this, and so we've got her partnered up for a mentoring program, and then the service unit is helping us out with guidance, and they are the official overseers of the program.
And they're available kind of at will type thing? Okay.
Ellen said she'll be here more this year. We'll see. So.
And there's absolutely no one on staff that would at all be interested in pursuing a special ed degree. I know that leaves another opening, but in the short
And
term,
I'll give it some thought. No one jumps out to me.
all right, any other comments?
Do we have a plan for volleyball?
Oh, yes. Julie will be the head coach. Jordan Amison is the assistant, and given the circumstances, I think we're going to try to add a third person. Don't want to say a name yet because it's not official. But someone who's certificated and on staff, though.
Okay, so voting on item 8D, roll call vote. Lisa, yes. Hope?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
JW?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Jason, second by Bobby. Roll call vote, starting with Hope.
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
JW?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Lisa? Yes. Motion carried 6-0. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.